From a professional soccer career to becoming a driving force in the mortgage industry, Brian Covey has shown what it takes to find your competitive edge. Get off the sidelines and get in the game. Find your competitive edge with Brian Covey.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Finding Your Competitive Edge. So you guys know, we look for great guests, and sometimes those come in the form of referrals. And so today we've got one of our fellow Brand Builders Group clients, and Ryan has come in from Colorado in for this week with Brand Builders. So I'm super excited because not only is Ryan a coach and a consultant and a speaker, he's the co-founder at Empire Partners. Guys, today, if you're a coach, you've ever wanted to know how to become a great coach in that space, we're going to pull back the curtain. We're going to talk to you about what are the elite coaches doing today, what's really required not only to be a great coach, but to actually run a successful business. As we know, not every coach is successful, profitable, and remains in that role for a long period of time. So we want to help you with the do's, the don'ts, all the things that you want to know. So stick around, grab a pen and a paper. So Ryan Lang, welcome, my friend.
Good to be here, man. Good to be here. Hey, listen, I'm just excited that I got to do the podcast alongside, making sure that I get some pork belly tacos next door. That's really why I came. I mean, if anybody really wants to know.
If you don't know, we had a little conversation about pork belly tacos, going to Edley's. There's a few places here with Mojo's, one of my friends. And so I say, hey, if you're going to come into Nashville and you've lived here before,
Yep.
So I got to recommend where to go. Let's talk about that a little bit, about your story, because you have lived here. We talked about, we crossed over in Tampa. Now you're out in Colorado. Let's tell everybody a little bit about your background, how you got to where you are.
Sure.
Get to know you.
Sure. So I was born in Colorado, just south of Denver in Aurora, and moved to Florida when I was 8. Lived in Tampa. My dad was an entrepreneur, and when I was a kid, was in the oil business. And as everybody, at least if you were there around during that time, the oil business kind of tanked in the mid 80s. And so we moved to Tampa, and he started a new company in Tampa, and that's where I met my wife. And she's a native tampon, as we would say. And so I lived in Florida for a long time and grew up an athlete, got into broadcasting. I worked for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for a couple of years. And then got into the business world in a very strange way. I got a phone call from my dad one day, and he had just sold a business that he was working on. And he said, hey, I don't know what in the world I'm doing with my life right now, but one of my old buddies called me up, and he's doing this oil and gas project, and I think I'm just going to go out there and do it with him. Do you want to go? And I was like, I don't know, but sure. Let's do it. And that turned into a 15-year career in oil and gas. We built a company together, he and I and our business partner, and that was very successful. We had a heck of a run, and kind of got towards the end of that run, and I was traveling a significant amount, almost 75% of the time. I ran all of our operations in the Appalachian Basin, and had offices in Pennsylvania and Ohio and West Virginia. And my wife was here, and we had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and long story short, things were getting awfully messy, and it was time to kind of figure something different out. And so that was what transitioned me back to Colorado. At the time, my intention was to stay in oil and gas. We actually had an office in Denver, and it was an opportunity to live and work in the same place instead of having to travel quite so much. And we moved to Colorado, and after about a year, I decided it was like, you know what, this is not fun anymore. I'm chasing a buck, and that's kind of it at this point, and I need to go figure out some purpose in my life. And that was really what led me kind of to coaching, and the rest, they say, is history.
Yeah, I often wonder how people get into coaching, right? Yeah. And so as you're going through, you got oil and gas, working with your dad, you're traveling all over the place. I can relate to the 1 and 3. Talk to me about, did coaching become something that maybe in sports you had someone influence you that you wanted to get into that, or where did the coaching piece come from?
That's a really good question. If I'm being honest, I would say that looking back, inside of me, there was something that always loved coaching. I loved mentoring people when I was in high school. It felt really good to me to mentor kids that were younger than me. I love teaching things. And even as somebody who was competitive as an athlete, I always wanted to compete, but there was something inwardly that always told me that coaching or leading in some way, shape, or form was what I was meant for. And when I was in oil and gas, that's really a big place that, where a lot of my desire to coach and help people came from my time in oil and gas. So we, at one point, I had upwards of like 200, 250 contractors that were working for us. And personally, I mean, just in the area that I was doing business in, I had at one time, upwards of 80, 90 people that were working for me directly at one time. And one of the things that was really important to me was to create a culture and an environment where, people felt lifted up, they felt empowered, they felt that it was a different environment than something, that they would experience in another brokerage of our type. And so I think that's a big part from a professional standpoint where it started for me, was that I loved having the opportunity to lead people and that looked like mentorship and coaching in just a slightly different way at that time. Yeah. So,
well, I love the journey, because a lot of people out there, they're probably putting themselves in their shoes going, okay, I want to coach. Maybe I've mentored people. Maybe I've been a leader and I've run. We often see people come out of corporate America and they're like, okay, now I want to go coach and I want to give back and all that. Did you know at that time what the coaching that you wanted, like who you wanted to coach, what you wanted to do with that? Or was that still kind of being unraveled and starting to figure out?
So when I left my company, it was a really interesting thing. It was a very difficult decision for me to make, simply because it was something that I had helped build, and my two partners were, my dad and our business partner David, who's a amazing man. I might as well be second father that actually lives here in Franklin. They're two people who are very, very close to me, and we were doing very well financially. So it was a really tough decision to make. And when I did, I kind of had some thoughts in mind, and this, for people that don't know me, this is a good description of just me as a human being. I walked out of my oil and gas business, and the two things that I really had on my, as far as what I thought I was going to do next. Growing up an athlete, my dad was an athlete in high school and college, and my mom was a aerobics teacher and then personal trainer. And when I was in college, my first job in fitness was as a personal trainer. So I had some experience in that early on. And I kept thinking, I now kind of have a new story to tell from a fitness perspective, because when I got into business and started traveling a lot, I mean, even with everything that I knew, got myself completely deconditioned, I was just a mess physically. And when we moved to Colorado, it was like, okay, game on, it's time to get after it. And I did, and I dropped almost 50 pounds and like 18% body fat. So I had a new story to tell from that perspective. So is that, I thought maybe I'll, go back to something in health and fitness. And then the other side of me went, or I could own a wine bar.
Totally different direction.
But that's like me in a nutshell. I'm, I love wine and I love to work out. So, so it was really, at that point, my thought was just, okay, I know I can't go back to work for somebody because I just suck at working for people. And I worked for myself for so long, it just didn't make sense. So initially when I got into coaching, I built a studio a personal training studio in my house in Colorado, and had some clients in person, and that was kind of the first step into coaching. And it wasn't too long. I mean, within 6 months, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm enjoying this, but I got to move heaven and earth to do anything or go anywhere with clients in person. I kind of forgot that part of the game. So I got into, online marketing and kind of figuring that out. And before too long, I just found myself personally more interested in what was going on upstairs for people, because I saw that was the true commonality. And that's I kind of started to make a shift at that point into more performance coaching, sales, marketing, things like that.
Dude, I love it. So let's jump right into it. People probably listening wondering, what makes a great coach?
Yeah, man. I think what makes a great coach? That is such a good question and a really tough one to answer. But a couple of things that I would say. I think a great coach is somebody who's who first things first is very, very aware of the people that need them. I think that in business in general, that's something that we can get away from and we can forget. And even in coaching, which is strange to say, I find a lot of people lose track of the people that really need them. And I think a really good coach is very anchored and aware of the people that need them. I think a good coach is someone who is a great coach is somebody who's curious. I think that the best coaches in the world of any kind, they may have a methodology, they may have their way, but they're always looking to figure out okay, I know this is my way, but what about this? Is there something could we do it better? And a great coach is certainly that, without question.
So last week we had one of our masterminds we went to in Erwin McManus. I don't know if you've...
Yeah.
Okay. So he actually shared that. He's like, that's really the driver. When you're in pursuit and you're following your passion and all of this, and a lot of coaches probably listening are thinking,
yeah, okay,
that's me being curious. It's literally what he shared probably 20 minutes on and how to be curious and all that. So I love that. And he talked about being aware of your audience. I think back for people that may not know Brand Builders Group at Rory and AJ say it all the time of you're most adequately equipped to serve who you once were.
Yes.
So let's dive into that. So if there's a coach listening out there, where they have a base or not today, and they're like, I don't really know who to serve. Like you were talking, I like wine. I like working out. I like all these things.
Yeah.
How do they figure out and really hone into their niche and figure out that audience?
Yeah, that's a good question. I certainly agree wholeheartedly with Rory's mantra about, being uniquely positioned to serve the person that you once were. And I think that that's a really great place for people to start. I think that oftentimes we try to make this real complicated, and we forget that we've been places in life that people are at right now. So certainly I think that's a great place to start. I think the other thing is that, if you really want to coach, but you're not sure where to go, I think looking around, spending the time to look around at the people that you know and the places that you go and the things that you see, what's needed in the world right now? What are people really struggling with? I think is a good question to ask. Also, of course, there are a lot of people out there that have done something for a very long time. They just haven't taught it yet. And I think those people have a lot to give the world that probably they haven't just yet. And so that's kind of an obvious one. If you've got an expertise, I think to make a shift from the doing to the teaching and the mentoring and the coaching can be a really powerful shift for people to make.
I think it's huge. And I often think about when you said that, there's a lot of people that have done things, right? And they probably have all these accomplishments. They've stacked up the trophies, as we might call them, and they know what they've done. And then I love what you said is then moving into teaching, which is where a lot of coaches struggle. They're like, I have all the results.
Yeah.
In the mortgage business, we often see it where the top performer gets moved to a leadership role, has no idea what that looks like, and then has to relearn and train. Like, wow, that's very different. How do people start to then take what they've done and then move into, okay, now I can teach other people to do what I've done, because that's the results they want.
Sure.
And they're chasing after. What would be some of the steps or the shifts they need to make?
I think one of the first things is, and I had to learn this the hard way in business. I think it can become very easy when you are, especially you talk about somebody who's a high performer, and you and I both know that as athletes, some of the best athletes in the world made terrible coaches. And some of the best coaches in the world were really marginal at best in their sport, right? And so one of the things that I find is if you're gonna successfully make that shift, it's being able to take the things that when we performed at a high level for a certain period of time, we've kind of got it in our head, what works for us and the framework that works for us and the way that we do it and all of that stuff. And I think one of the first steps is asking yourself, okay, does this really just shoot right out of my brain the way that I think it to somebody else? Will that even make sense? I think it's taking the time to figure out how you can make what you know really well digestible by somebody else. Mm-hmm. Because that's a big part of it. It's anytime we're coaching and teaching something, and Lord knows I've been through this, I'm sure you have too, where you're coaching and teaching something and you know how to do it, and it's like, no, just this, and people kind of look at you cross-eyed a little bit, So I think it's taking that time to really make sure that your information is digestible, because as good as you are at what you do, if you can't put it in a learnable, simple, teachable fashion, then it's not going to be much good to anybody.
Hey guys, it's Brian here. I hope you are enjoying the show. By the way, if you're an entrepreneur or a solopreneur looking to grow your personal brand, make a bigger impact, maybe increase your leads and grow your revenue, let's help you get started today by connecting up with my friends over at the Brand Builders Group. You've heard me talk about them, but if you're new here, this is definitely the first step to get you started in turning your reputation into revenue. Head over to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey. Again, to set up your free brand call, go to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey to set up a free strategy call with one of the team at Brand Builders, and they will dive into your specific goals for how you want to grow your personal brand. I can't wait to hear how it goes. I had a mentor share with me, if you're going to present that to your 7-year-old, and you got 7, almost 8-year-old, we both got young kids, and it's like, if they can't understand the concept, you haven't taken the complex and made it simple.
Yes.
And whoever you're teaching, while they may be older in age and have more experience, if you can't codify it in a way that they can understand it, and that young kid goes, I get that. Like, I could do that, right?
Yep.
And I think about that oftentimes, and that's almost really my kind of test. If I could explain that to my youngest, it's even going to get what I'm talking about. He's like, Dad, I have no idea, or just tune me out. And as coaches, a lot of times we want to make it so complex and maybe want to make it seem so extraordinary and special.
Yes.
But yet the end product is really the person we're impacting and influence. And so what would be some steps in that? Because I always think about, I love to break things down for people of how do you keep things simple when you're teaching? Because you do a lot of this, right? I mean, you're teaching coaches, which could be one of the hardest populations.
Yeah, it is.
Right? That they already think they know it.
Yeah.
The athlete goes, look, coach, I got it figured out.
Yeah.
Like, you coach, I'll play.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you help them move forward?
I think I think the first thing is, to your point, clearly it's taking what you know is most important and impactful and making it as simple as possible, and then adding complexities afterwards. I was just listening to a podcast on the way to the airport this morning with John Maxwell, who, I mean, not many people in the world better at delivering a message than that guy.
Yeah, the best.
And he was saying exactly that. It was start with something that's simple and then add complexities to it kind of as you go. And I think your point is really really valid in the way that we overcomplicate things. And I find this all the time, actually, because I've done so much mentorship in high ticket sales and coaching. When it comes down to telling people about a solution, oh my goodness, we just love to go off in the weeds. When it's about our program, we want to tell you about every little nook and cranny and how we came up with it and all the nuances. And it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. And so I actually approach teaching and coaching coaches the same way I would a sales or enrollment conversation, which is I'm looking at what are the problems that you're trying to solve? What do you really care about? And I'm going to address that. That's the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to address that, because I know that if we can do that, we can get into all kinds of complexities and nuances later on down the road. But I want to look at the problems that you most need to solve and focus on those big rocks right out of the gate.
Dude, I love that. Yeah, I wrote this down because my coach and I talk about this all the time of enrollment and registration and bringing people through the process and all that. And I love that you said we're solving a problem for someone else. It is about them. Yep. And we often want to make that really complex. Yep. For coaches out there that are thinking, they're going, okay, I hear you, Ryan. Like this is all like landing with me. How do they then start to move into creating that offer? Because I love what you said too. Is they want to get in the weeds, right? They want to tell them everything about. They almost want to coach them before enrolling them in a process and getting them to buy into. I'm the right person to help you solve this problem and to work with you to help you accomplish this goal you have. So how do they start to create a meaningful, compelling offer?
I think when it comes to creating an offer, the biggest problem in the coaching industry is that most coaches know that they theoretically can help everybody. And we've all done it. It's like the idea of niching down, feels so difficult and almost icky to a point. No, I can't leave these people out. But I know how to do that. It's finding one person that has one problem that you are uniquely qualified to serve and serving the crap out of them. And, if people would do that more often, quite frankly, we'd have a lot more profitable coaches in the world right now. But people are so scared to cut out certain portions of the population, and they're so scared to get quote unquote pigeonholed that they avoid doing it. And as a result, it becomes very difficult because their messaging gets very diluted. And especially when you get to the point of an enrollment or sales conversation, you're not nearly as powerful in that conversation if you've got a very, very specific problem that you're solving for a very, very specific person.
Man, rewind that, because that's it right there. People get lost. And to your point, we might be able to help more people. And probably most of the people that we encounter in our life, like, I could help them, right? I have enough information. I have enough experience. I can help them, but not getting really clear on who's the one. Who's the one? And then there's lots of those ones, right, that are out there. And we don't think abundantly about that. And I love as you start going down that path, because for everybody out there, think about who is your one. People call it targeted avatar, right? All these different kind of buzzwords. But who is the person you really could help? Like, you above anybody else in the market. Like, you were the one, if they came to you, you're like, dude, I got this. Like, I can help you get this result as they go through. And you gave me a stat when we were prepping, we were talking. And it was almost scary about what the average coach makes. What is it, $36,000 a year? Most burn out and fail within 2 years.
2 years.
And let's talk about why that is, and then we'll move into like how can we not be that statistic, right? But why do you think that is, that the income is low and then they just don't sustain? They don't make it.
So I would say there are a couple of different reasons for this. The first and foremost is that there are a lot of amazing organizations and companies out there that certify coaches. So, in today's society, we have coaches for everything. And so there's so many different certifying organizations. And the one thing, if there's a coach out here who's going through certification and you're kind of trying to figure out like what's going to be next, here's one thing that I want you to know. Certifying organizations are really good at certifying you in learning how to be a coach, the act of being a coach. And of course there are some that are better than others, but I still have yet to find one. And I've been through plenty on my own, and I've coached thousands of people who've been through all kinds of different programs. I still have yet to find one that adequately teaches and prepares a coach to be a business owner. And it's a scary thing, Brian, because when I think about this, and the funny thing is, like, I want to be really clear. I half lost my mind when I went into coaching, and, I forgot so many of the things that I did, in a business that, made 8 figures. When I got into coaching, again, I wasn't taught that, and it was such a different environment than I was used to. There were many things that I would have done in a quote unquote normal business that I didn't do. Well, here's the deal. At the end of the day, if you are an independent coach and you're not going to go work for somebody, and those are 2 different things. So if you're going to go work for somebody, then you don't necessarily need to do this. But if you're an independent coach, you are now, you are your business of one, and it's no different from any other business. You need to understand marketing. You need to understand sales. You need to understand how to read a balance sheet and, what a P&L is. And the truth is that I have yet to come across one certifying body that does that. And that's actually, the funny thing is, that was the genesis of our company, Empire Partners, was that we collectively found that so many coaches didn't know how to do that. That was a big part of why we started our company. So that would be number one. The second piece, I would say, is that coaches oftentimes walk into coaching as we're taught to do, by the way, in most cases, trading time for money. Mm-hmm. I had already had the experience in personal training of being taught to trade time for money, and I knew I hated it. And I wasn't averse to sales at all, and I was not averse at all to a higher ticket, program. And when I first got taught how to sell a high ticket program, I was just like, eureka, this is like, yes, can we please, I'm not going backwards now. This is the only thing. And there are many different ways to skin a cat and lots of different ways to coach and all kinds of different program formats and all of that stuff. And I don't want to get in the weeds there. But what I do want to mention is that one of the killers for coaches is working 60 hours a week and coaching your buns off and barely making enough money to put food on the table. And more often than not, it's because coaches are doing things by the hour and they're not valuing themselves and their time, and most importantly, the outcomes that they're capable of getting for their clients.
The trading time for money, I can tell you, it doesn't matter what business you're in. Like, once I discovered that to be absolutely true,
yep,
it was the most eye-opening thing. We're like, why did I not learn that sooner? Even being a mortgage originator,
yeah.
Like, I was trading time for money and to do loans and all that stuff, and it's the same.
Yeah.
What's interesting, it's like universal, whether it's coaching and personal fitness, coaching and coaching, like coaching coaches that you're doing. How do people move through that mindset? Because I do think it's a mindset belief
huge.
Of,
yep,
well, I can just charge more. I've heard people say, well, I'm charging this, I'm just going to charge more. I'm going to work my 60 hours and
yeah.
I'm going to up my fees, right? I'm
yeah.
going to have my clients pay more. You're still trading time for money.
You are.
How do they move out of that?
I want to give a lot of credit to 2 of my most important mentors in the coaching space, Russ Ruffino, who built a wonderful company called Clients on Demand, and my closest personal mentor in the arena of sales, Mark Von Musser, who's actually my partner Brooke's uncle. They really taught me to make a shift when it came to pricing my program and the way that I valued what I was putting on the table for people. They really taught me to make a shift from what is my time worth? Because that's usually the question that you're taught to ask. Well, what do you think your time is worth?
That's right.
I don't know. They taught me to make a shift to looking at the outcome that I'm going to get for somebody and what is the lifetime value of that outcome. So take personal training, for example, and this is one that's near and dear to my heart, and it just kills me, Brian, because there are still so many personal trainers that are out there right now, that are charging $25, $30 an hour. And when we think about that, let's just use that as an example because it's one that everybody can understand. If I take somebody who is totally deconditioned and they're pre-diabetic and they're overweight and they're probably pre-hypertensive and things like that, and over the course of, let's say, 6 months, I get them to a point where they've lost 20, 30 pounds, their blood sugar's under control, they're off of medications. How much money is it worth for them to go out and be able to play with their children for an extra 10 years? How much money is it worth that they actually get to be around for their grandchildren? How much money is it worth that they get to get up every day and actually feel good in their own skin instead of struggling through life? And I think that's the big shift from a mindset perspective that people need to make, that I was taught to make by Russ and Mark, is really learning how to value the outcomes that you're getting for people. And in addition to that, it's not just an internal belief, it starts internally. Because if you don't believe that, then especially when it comes to that sales and enrollment conversation, the person on the other side of the phone is not going to believe it either. But it's you believing it, and then you being able to truly enunciate that in your marketing, in your sales calls, in all of that.
Shoot, I love that. And that is where your years of experience, and most coaches I've found, they've invested in themselves. They've learned all this information. And you're right, there is a desired outcome that if we were able to help you achieve that is worth something, right? And as you go through it. So I'd love to go back a little bit. And I love this question of, what do you wish you knew when you got in the coaching business that you know now that you would say, okay, for all these new coaches and people, because there's a flood of them that I see online all the time that are just getting in the game.
Yeah.
What should they know that you've already experienced and maybe could help them fast track and avoid some of those pitfalls and things that you wish you knew sooner?
Yeah, I would say two of the biggies. I'm going to start with sales because that's a big, that's a big part of my background. I wish that I had put more emphasis on the sales and on mastering sales and enrollments early on, because that's the one thing we're always thinking in business. We're always talking about like what can we directly affect, and what are the external things that are going to go on around us that we have to kind of react to. And when you think about marketing and like how many people are actually showing up at your doorstep and all of those kinds of things, yes, you can have some direct impact on that. But the one thing about sales is that, especially when it comes to coaching, that is the variable that you have total control over. Once somebody lands on your doorstep and you're actually having that conversation, whatever happens is on you at that point. I mean, yes, they have to make a choice at the end of the day, of course. But I wish I had known that ahead of time, because one of the biggest mistakes that I made when I came into coaching, and please, if you're interested in getting into coaching, or you are a coach and you've had a deep sales background, please listen to what I'm about to say. I've been selling something like my entire life. I mean, since I was 15 years old, probably. And I've done all kinds of different types of sales, from vacations to cars to, really big money deals in the oil and gas industry. And when I got into coaching and I started to get the first true mentorship that I was getting in coaching, I remember distinctly getting a sales system and going, oh yeah, listen, just give me the marketing thing. Just tell me what I got to do with the marketing, and just tell me what I got to do with my funnel and all of that stuff. And I'm fine with this sales thing, And I remember going, when I finally did kind of come around to looking at it, I would pick bits and pieces that I would do. As Dave Ramsey would say, I did it ish, right? Like I'd go, oh yeah, you know what? I think I like that, but I'm not going to do this thing. And what really changed for me was when I had failed enough that I was finally willing to fully empty my cup and get someone who really knew what they were doing, who had a proven track record, not of sales, but of sales in the coaching industry, high ticket sales in the coaching industry, it was empty that cup, and I don't care what I've known in the past. I'm going to truly just pretend I'm a complete idiot as it relates to this stuff. We're going to start from scratch, and that changed everything for me. So that's one big rock for sure.
I think most people skip the sales part.
Yep.
They either aren't good at it, they're afraid of it, all these things there.
Yep.
I love that you bring that up because that is part of the game.
Yep.
Right? People want to just look at coaching as just coaching, but when you look at it as you're a business owner, now you're in sales and marketing, and now you are delivering as a coach when you get into that space. And so I love that you share that because it looks glitz and glamour.
Yeah.
Right? You look online, like, man, these guys, they're coaching people, and I love people come, what do you do? Man, I'm a coach, And it's like, awesome. Like, tell me about that. And they have parts of it.
Yep.
But to be the holistic piece, and you had shared earlier about the whole performance coaching and things.
Yeah.
Tell me a little about that, because I always think about the whole person, and you said whole performance. I'm like, what is this?
What is it? So whole performance coaching is something that I've been developing for many years now. And really what it comes from is when I was in my oil and gas business, I won't sugarcoat this. When it got close to the end, the last 2 years, Brian, I had an absolutely epic meltdown. I mean, I was physically a mess. I was spiritually a mess. My marriage was a mess. And yet when you looked, if you were on the outside looking in, you would see somebody who financially was doing really well, and a business that was very successful, playing with some of the biggest players in the energy industry, and who to a large degree, until the very end, really held the respect of the people that worked for him and with him and all of that stuff. And it was a mess. I mean, I kind of liken it. I grew up with my mother as an English teacher, and I'm a big literary guy. And it's kind of, for those of you that know the picture of Dorian Gray, it's that kind of thing. It's like on the outside, it looks like one thing, but the inside is really yucky. And, when after I left my business and I kind of started over and I started from scratch, I did two things. One was to go, okay, we're going to start over, because it literally was to the point I felt so poorly about myself, and I felt like I'd made so many humongous mistakes that were unforgivable, that, I had thoughts of like, wow, I might just want this to be over kind of thing. And when I decided that was not going to happen, and I decided to come back to my family and to make this work, it was like, okay, buckle up, sweetheart. How, now if we're going to do this, how do we do it? How do we make Ryan the best Ryan that he can possibly be? And so part of that was has been introspectively over the years. This didn't happen initially. Initially, I was too close to it to really see a lot of what I see today. But it's constantly been looking back at like, how did that happen? Mm-hmm. And also, I found the more that I studied it, a truly cautionary tale. And when we think about this, we don't have to look too hard to figure it out. When we think about high performance, to me, when people say high performance in the way that they typically mean it, that to me says it's someone who's capable of performing at a high level in one activity or one area of their life. That's all that it means to me. And when we look back over history, some of the highest performers that we would think of, almost every single one of them, whether it's sports or music or acting or whatever it is, there is a story of something in their lives epically melting down. I mean, Tiger Woods, anybody? Right? So whole performance really came out of me wanting for myself to go, okay, I'm not going to look at anybody else, but for me, I fully believe that it's possible to have it all. Like, I refuse to believe when I was in basic training, I'll never forget being going through the DFAC, getting lunch and taking a little too much time deciding what I wanted, and my drill sergeant going, yo, what do you think this is, Burger King? You think you can have it your way, right? And here's the thing, I do think I can have it my way, and that's exactly how I want it. I want it all. And that was the genesis of what has kind of led me to, my system of whole performance coaching, which is the idea that we don't have to sacrifice other areas of our lives to play at a high level, in one area. And I want to be really clear by saying that I'm not ridiculous in thinking that the dial doesn't go a little up or down if we're hyper focused on one thing or another. But here's what should never happen, because it doesn't have to. It should never be I'm at the top of the mountain in this area and I don't want anybody to know that I'm like in the basement over here. I'm crushing it in my business, but my marriage is a disaster. My marriage is great, but I've got to declare bankruptcy, or I believe you can have it all, and that's what whole performance coaching is truly teaching people how to play at a high level in every single area.
Dude, I freaking love that. So you probably hear some of the things I'll share is I believe you can be ridiculously successful in all areas of your life.
Yep.
And I love what you said too, because people talk about balance and integration and all these things. I love the way you explain that, though, is sometimes in your life, you're going to be dialing up certain areas. You're like, you know what? I need to work on my faith a little bit. I need to work on my marriage a little bit. I need to work on my finances, my fitness. Like, there is an area you're going to be hyper focused and you're going to give it more attention.
Yep.
But it never means you neglect your health and your relationships and your faith. Like, it's not like you're abandoning it. And I love the way you explain that, because too often we think, well, I'm going to go all in over here, which means I can't do anything over here.
Yes. So
untrue.
Yes.
And I'm glad you said it. What else would you add to people listening to that? Because we hear the balance and the integration. They may hear that and go, Ryan, I want to have it all, but man, I go in over here and this part of my life just falls apart.
Yeah. Well, so there are two things. I want to come back to that. Before I do, though, I know that right now there are some type A high performing people that are like, you're full of crap. You cannot do that. And in addition to that, they're thinking there's that word balance. And to the high performer, that is a dirty word. It's like, God forbid. And it's a dirty word because we've always associated, for the most part, high performer thinks balance, they think mediocrity. And I want to cut ties with that, because I think it's a total fallacy. And let's just get rid of the word balance. What if, when we think of balance, we think of like, if we have a graph of, we take a scale of 0 to 100, balance would be like everything in your life is hanging out around 50. Everything's like, okay, right? And I want to tell people, and this is for the high performer, I want you to believe that you can just take that line from 50 and move it up to like 90, 95 in every area, where we raise everything up. And so everything's playing at that level. So for somebody, though, that is in a position where they're playing at a really high level in one area and something else is really suffering right now, I think the very first thing is, and this is the first place that I started. I felt very fortunate to have been mentored from afar, if you will, I would say, by Mark Devine, who's an amazing dude. If you don't know who he is, get on Google and YouTube like right after this episode. But I learned so much. I was so attracted to his message because there was so much responsibility, and he seemed like a very intentional man. And that's the word that I would say to the people that are having that struggle, is that the very first step in pulling something up that you've recognized has fallen below where you believe it should be is getting intentional. And it's getting intentional about what you want and the outcome, and then getting intentional about how you're treating it and how you're acting.
Dude, I love that. And I love that you coach from one side of the high performers and type A's. That's probably going to hit them square between the eyes, right? They're, hold on. What a great way to think of that, though. Instead of thinking about it as average and 50, like we're all almost taught, we almost default to it.
Yep.
It's like, okay, what if I had it up there? And what I would also add to that, because you beautifully stated that, is Guys, it doesn't have to be perfection. I know I struggled with that. It's like, it's got to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. I was actually told by a coach, he goes, perfection's actually the lowest standard you can have because it is never achievable. No one ever got there except Jesus. So guess what? You ain't getting there either in this life. So let's transition to this. I love finding out people's competitive edge. I can kind of tell yours. You're a competitive guy.
Sure.
And obviously, you're in the space. What do you think your competitive edge is?
And you're asking that in just as a human or in our coaching business or both? Or?
Either one, whichever way you want to go. There's what makes you uniquely different.
I would say that I am really scared to ever wake up and feel like I got it. I spent so much of the early part of my life not achieving things that were easily within my grasp because I decided that I got it. I've had the blessing and the curse of being very gifted by God in many different things and just enough that I could get by in a lot of different areas without having to quote unquote master things. And I would say that one of the things that today I truly believe gives me the competitive edge is that I don't ever rest on I got it. Not ever. And that only came from truly learning the lesson and also learning what comes on the other side of it. Because the excitement and even when I think I've got something, the excitement and the joy that comes from going, oh, there's something else here. Ooh, let's dig in. How can we do it better? How can we get better? How can we make other people better? All of those things. And that's something that it's a commitment I make to myself every single day that, there's the old saying, the master is the constant student. And I really try as best I can to live that every single day of my life. And I think it makes a huge difference in my relationships, in my business, and in my personal life, all of it.
Oh, you nailed it. You think back to when you said, what makes a great coach and being curious is that's the introspective work and the inside work that you've clearly done. Yeah. Because I can sit here and as I listen to you, I love these conversations because it's one where you just go, man, you're learning and you're listening to people's story and it unfolds and you realize like how God has uniquely equipped people. And so as people are listening to this, guys, find your story, find your competitive edge as you go through this and go, okay, now here's the audience. Here's who I can serve and step into that. So anything we didn't cover or ask that you want to add? I know we've got the ebook. We're going to add the link to give people resources. I'm all about, man, we got to equip you. We gave you a lot of great information. Hopefully people took notes and they go back to this. We are going to have the link for your new site, which is going to be up and running, all rebranded, all looking awesome. Anything else though that we left out you want to make sure we get the audience?
I'll say one thing. If there's one reason that I'm as passionate about helping coaches as I am, because I could have gone into a lot of different industries from a coaching and consulting standpoint, it's the ripple effect that I get to make by helping coaches. And one of the things that I want to say to anybody right now, this is whether you're a coach, whether you're a leader, you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that I want to really hammer home for people is that every day that we don't figure out what we need to figure out to serve people at the level we're meant to serve them at, the people that we are meant to serve are going to stay in suffering while we figure it out. And every day as a coach that we, aren't really out there coaching the people that we should be coaching, every day as a business owner that we're okay just being okay in our business and not really growing it, every day as a parent, we're all meant to impact somebody in this life, and every day that we don't have our own stuff figured out, whether it be personally or business wise, those people will continue to stay in suffering and they'll be continually waiting for your unique voice. And I want to empower you and encourage you to go out and give that, because somebody needs it. They don't need another coach. They need you, and they need your voice. And I hope that you do everything that you need to do to go give it to them.
That's the mic drop at the end. I love that. And I'm glad you went there, because for everybody listening, they've probably taken notes. They're wondering what they can do next. And to think about, there are people waiting on them today.
Yeah.
In the business, I've found once you get these fundamentals and sales and marketing and all the stuff, the rest comes because you've identified this is who I'm here to serve, and that's what's there. So thank you.
Yep.
Amazing conversation.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah, I loved it.
Well, guys, it's been another episode of Finding Your Competitive Edge. We're going to put all the links so you can connect up with Ryan. Make sure you get the free ebook. Make sure you go on his website and figure out what services are offered, especially if you're a coach or you ever want to get in the coaching space. This was basically giving you the roadmap, all the things to do and also things to avoid through real life experience. And that's what I love by having these conversations. Make sure you also go over to Amazon, grab the book, Conversations with Covey. That's also another great one to help equip you with what's there. Check out our website, www.briancovey.com. And guys, leave us a review. Leave us a comment on the podcast. We do this to equip people all across the world, as Ryan was just sharing, to really give back in a way to equip you wherever you are. I've been in probably where you are today, or our guest has, and you're going to relate to that. We want to help you take that next step forward, whatever that is in your life. So we've been able to do that. Share it with your friends. Leave us a review. Let us know how we can serve you better. And we will be back on the next episode. Appreciate you guys for listening and tuning in. Have a great one.